The night she told me she needed distance, my heart stood still, as though the world itself had pressed pause. I watched her eyes tremble with unspoken fears, her lips choosing silence over the truth that might break us both. I didn't beg her to stay, though every bone in me screamed to hold her. Instead, I let her go, because love isn't always about clutching tightly. It's about trusting that what is meant to be will find its way back. The palace walls felt colder that evening, and the moon's light seemed lonelier, but I decided then, I would wait. Not out of desperation, but out of the faith that she was worth every heartbeat of longing. Days turned into weeks, and still I saw her shadow in every quiet corner of my life. In the desert's golden dunes, in the scent of the sea at Jumeirah, in the gentle laughter of strangers that reminded me of her. People told me to move on, to distract myself with duty, with travel, with the thousand glittering things my life offers. But what they didn't understand is that her absence had become my greatest teacher. It taught me patience. It taught me that sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is wait without demanding answers, without chasing, without trying to rewrite what has already been written. I wrote her letters I never sent, pages soaked in words she may never read. I told her how I missed the way she listened to my silence as if it were music, how she saw through the titles and crowns and recognized the man beneath it all. In those letters, I confessed my fears, my dreams, and the unshakable belief that even if oceans stretched between us, my heart would still recognize her in a crowd of thousands. Waiting, I realized, wasn't empty. It was full of memories, of hope, and of a quiet kind of love that refused to vanish. The world continued moving at its relentless pace, meetings, events, diplomatic dinners, but inside me, there was a stillness that nothing could shake. I would smile for the cameras, but inside, I was counting the days, marking them not with impatience, but with a strange gratitude. For every day apart was a day closer to when she might return. I knew distance could change people. I knew she might come back different, or not at all. But the point wasn't in controlling the outcome, it was in honoring the love as it once was, and perhaps, as it could be again. At night, I'd walk through the royal gardens alone. The same gardens where we once laughed under the stars, when her head rested on my shoulder and her eyes reflected the moonlight. I'd pause by the roses she loved most, the white ones, and imagine her hands brushing against the petals. It was strange, how even in absence, she was everywhere. People think distance is an empty space, but I've come to know it as a place where love is tested, where hearts are refined like gold in fire. Some mornings, I'd wake before dawn and ride my horse across the sands, feeling the cool wind against my face. That was when I felt closest to her, when the world was silent except for the rhythm of hooves and the whisper of the desert. I'd speak to her in my mind, telling her I was still here, still waiting, still believing. Perhaps she could feel it wherever she was. Perhaps that's the secret about love. It finds its way into the heart of the one it's meant for, no matter how far the distance. I remember the last time I saw her smile. It wasn't the kind you give to everyone. It was the rare one, the one that tells you you've been seen, truly seen. That image became my anchor during the loneliest nights. When doubt crept in, I held onto that memory like a lifeline, reminding myself that love as deep as ours doesn't simply vanish. It changes shape, it hides, but it doesn't disappear. And so, I waited. There were moments when I questioned my choice. Waiting is not a soft thing. It is sharp, and it cuts you with what-ifs. What if she found someone else? What if her absence was her quiet goodbye? But each time the fear tried to pull me under, I remembered that I was not waiting for just anyone. I was waiting for her, the woman who made me believe that love could outlast storms, distance, and time itself. That kind of love is worth the ache. I learned to embrace the quiet, to find beauty in the unknown. I stopped asking, when will she come back? And started saying, if she returns, I will still be here. My love became a vow, unspoken yet unbreakable. It was not about claiming her. It was about honoring what we shared, even if life had pulled us apart for reasons neither of us could fully understand. Months passed. Seasons changed. My life continued to unfold in the public eye, but my heart remained tethered to the invisible thread that bound us. I spoke little of her to others, guarding our story like a jewel too precious to expose. Not out of shame, but out of reverence. Some loves are not meant to be dissected by curious minds. They are meant to be lived, even in absence. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, I stood by the balcony of my room, watching the sky turn into shades of fire and gold. I realized then that waiting had transformed me. It had made me softer, more patient, more attuned to the quiet language of the heart. And even if she never returned, I would carry that transformation with me for the rest of my life. But deep down, I believed she would return. Not because I was entitled to her, but because love like ours doesn't just fade into the background. It leaves a mark, and that mark calls you home. I imagined her walking back into my life, maybe hesitant, maybe changed, but still her, still mine in the way that matters most, in spirit. And if that day comes, I won't ask her why she left or why she took so long. I will simply hold her, as if the months apart were nothing more than a breath between sentences. Because waiting, I've learned, is not about time, it's about love's ability to endure without demanding anything in return. Until then, I will keep my heart open, my faith steady, and my love unwavering. She chose distance. I chose to wait. And somewhere in that space between us, I believe our hearts are still quietly meeting. I never left because I stopped loving him. I left because I needed to understand myself away from his light. Being loved by Sheikh Hamdan is like standing under the sun, warm, radiant, but sometimes blinding. I needed to know if I could still stand on my own when the light was far away. It wasn't distance from him I truly sought. It was distance from the version of me that had become too dependent on his presence to feel whole. But every step I took away from him, I felt his absence like an echo in my bones. In the first weeks, I told myself I was strong, that I could survive without hearing his voice. I filled my days with noise, work, friends, meaningless errands, anything to avoid the quiet where his memory waited. But at night, in the silence, I could hear him.